Let's dive right into today's explainer. We are looking at a massive, blinking red alert for retail investors right now, and honestly, it acts as a real canary in the coal mine for our financial futures. Today, we're unpacking the hidden dangers facing our assets, and we're going to dissect exactly what these impending wealth transfers actually look like. We aren't just skimming over vague warnings here. We are doing a highly focused deconstruction of specific, urgent insights pulled straight from recent financial analysis. Look, as retail investors trying to navigate an unbelievably uncertain landscape, understanding the actual real-world mechanics of these market shifts is absolutely vital if we want to protect our portfolios today.
Just listen closely to this stark reality: the 5 hidden wealth transfers of the coming crisis. Now, they aren't suggesting some mild little market correction, and they certainly aren't offering a breezy, optimistic tip on how to save a few extra pennies. No, this is explicitly declaring a major impending systemic event. When experts frame the economic landscape with this level of absolute certainty and urgency, well, that demands our immediate attention. It frames the entire economic picture not as some steady upward march, but as a highly precarious situation that's literally teetering right on the edge.
Notice that number 5. The source isolates exactly 5 distinct, upcoming economic wealth shifts. By drawing these hard boundaries, it completely transforms a sense of vague market dread into a concrete, targeted alert. To really wrap our heads around these 5 mechanisms, we've got to look back at major economic events of the past century. Think about the catastrophic crashes of 1929 or 2008. In those periods, similarly structured, massive wealth shifts occurred right under the noses of everyday retail investors. There aren't an infinite number of things to worry about, right? But these precise mechanisms are actively in motion. This quantification turns a generalized warning into a specific, actionable blueprint for anyone paying close attention to their hard-earned assets.
All right, let's jump right into Section 1, the next impending crisis.
The language used here is completely definitive, warning us to take action before the crisis hits. Notice that? This isn't a hypothetical if it happens. Just like those major systemic crashes of the past century we just mentioned, the dominoes are already falling. The timeline is actively shrinking as we speak. For us retail investors, adopting this perspective means fundamentally shifting from a defensive posture, just hoping for the best, to a highly proactive stance where we are preparing for an inevitable impact. The window to get ready is closing fast, and that fundamentally changes the entire risk profile for literally anyone holding assets today.
Moving right along to Section 2, hidden wealth transfers.
This brings us to the single biggest danger facing retail investors today. Wealth doesn't just evaporate into thin air. It is actively being transferred. The source outlines some incredibly concrete examples of this phenomenon happening in real time. Whether it's inflation silently siphoning the purchasing power right out of everyday savings to fund government debt relief, or institutional capital quietly rotating out of legacy commercial real estate and pouring into decentralized digital assets, these shifts are absolutely massive. And the wildest part? They are deliberately hidden in plain sight. It implies a total lack of transparency in the broader financial system. The rules of the game are shifting behind the scenes, leaving everyday investors incredibly vulnerable to losing their footing without even realizing the ground beneath them is shifting.
Which brings us to Section 3, the danger of silence.
The text points out a massive, glaring blind spot. Absolutely no one in the mainstream is talking about these specific transfers, and that creates a dangerously false sense of security. If nobody is talking about it, human nature automatically assumes there's absolutely nothing to worry about, right? To break through this silence and actually protect your assets, the source recommends 3 very actionable steps you can take. First up, audit your portfolio right now for overexposure to legacy banking and vulnerable traditional sectors. Second, diversify into hard, tangible assets that historical data proves can actually weather these systemic shocks. And third, actively track institutional money flows, rather than just relying on whatever the retail headlines are screaming today.
So, to summarize our deconstruction today, we are looking at 3 unignorable pillars derived straight from the source that every single investor must recognize. First, the certainty of the coming crisis, directly mirroring those historic systemic events of the past century. Second, the reality of hidden wealth transfers, meaning your assets are at risk of being quietly siphoned away by very real mechanisms like inflation and institutional capital rotation. And third, the danger of collective silence, which is exactly why you need proactive steps to audit, diversify, and track the real money flows. Together, these form a stark, undeniable warning that demands a radical reassessment of how we are all positioned for the future.
I want to leave you to consider this final thought regarding your own assets and your preparedness before the next crisis actually hits. What wealth transfers are hiding in your blind spot? If the conversation around you is completely silent, how are you going to identify the quiet movements that could completely redefine your financial standing? This explainer has unpacked the anatomy of this severe warning, but honestly, the very next step is entirely up to you. Take a hard, objective look at your own strategies and ask yourself if you are truly prepared for what our source insists is inevitably coming. Thank you so much for joining me to deconstruct this vital topic, and please stay focused out there.